Dispatch, this is Parks Canada. We've received an SOS. Repeat, an SOS. Deep in Red Deer Valley.
What's the message?
Only 3 words. Bear attack bad.
My God! Get a team in the air now!
Negative. Weather's grounding all flights.
Then those hikers are out there alone.
With courage.
Welcome to True Animal Terrors, where real danger meets real stories. Don't look away. The mountains of Alberta had always carried a gravity that few could resist. They rose like stone fortresses, their peaks glazed in the pale fire of autumn's sunlight. Their valleys deep and veined with streams so cold they seemed carved from ice itself. On October 1st in the year 2023, Ethan Cole and Rachel Meyer stepped into those mountains once again. They were not casual visitors. They were experienced, careful, disciplined. They treated the land like a living thing full of mystery and authority. To them, this was not recreation. This was belonging. Ethan adjusted the straps on his pack that morning, his breath curling in small clouds before the air. He checked the buckle once, then again a habit formed through years of trekking into wild places. Rachel smiled at him, her eyes soft but steady, her gloved hand brushing against the fur of Tris, their border collie. The dog wagged her tail and pressed close to Rachel's leg. There was no fear in the animal, only excitement, only trust. The Red Deer River Valley was quiet that day. No highways, no cell towers, no echo of the modern world. Just wind humming in the spruce, just the faint call of a raven somewhere beyond the ridge. They moved carefully, boots crunching across frosted ground poles, clicking on stone. Ethan carried bear spray at his side. Rachel did too. Their food was sealed in dry bags tied with practiced knots. They followed every rule that Parks Canada had written. They had always done so. Ethan's voice was low as he walked, almost as if he were talking to himself. Check the ridgeline. Watch the wind. Rachel answered without looking up, already watching. It was the rhythm of 2 people who had spent decades in step with each other. They rarely needed full sentences. They spoke in fragments, codes, reminders. Their minds had been shaped by the mountains. Their silence was not absence. It was knowledge. For the first 2 days of their trek, everything felt almost dreamlike. The autumn sun lit the larches in gold. The meadows glowed with soft fading wildflowers. At night, the temperature dropped until their breath inside the tent hung like mist above their sleeping bags. Tris curled herself tightly against the nylon wall, her nose twitching with the sense of pine and soil. Rachel wrote small notes in her weatherproof journal. Ethan sketched crude maps of their route. They laughed when the wind rattled the fly sheet. Nothing seemed out of place. But deep in the Red Deer Valley, a grizzly sow was moving. She was old by bear standards, 25 years of survival pressed into the rippling mass of her body. She weighed close to 400 pounds muscle, layered over bone like armor. Her claws were the length of a man's finger. Her nose could detect the trace of food from miles away. She had no cubs that year. She was free of the instinct to defend. She was driven by something older, simpler, and far more relentless hunger. Biologists call it hyperphagia. In early fall, grizzlies eat nearly nonstop. Their bodies demand it. They tear into roots, gorge on berries, strip carcasses clean. Their hearts slow for hibernation, but their appetites surge. A bear can eat up to 20,000 calories in a single day during that season. It is not cruelty, it is survival. And in that valley, hunger sharpened every instinct. Ethan and Rachel did not know she was near. How could they? The forest gave no warning. The wind carried no roar. To them, the wilderness still felt balanced. Yet something subtle pressed at Ethan's mind on the 3rd evening. A silence deeper than usual. The air held no owl call, no distant coyote. Even Tris seemed restless, ears twitching more than before. Ethan rubbed his hands together by the stove as they cooked. He tried to ignore the feeling. Foods hung high, sprays ready. "We're fine," he told himself. Rachel glanced at him. "You said that out loud." He smiled faintly. "Guess I did." Later, when they lay down in their tent, Rachel rested her head against the fabric wall and listened. She thought about the notices they had read before leaving. Rangers had warned of increased bear activity. Reports of encounters, none fatal, but tense. She wondered if they should have chosen a shorter route, yet the trail was part of them. Turning back had never been their language. The night of October 1st arrived with a brittle chill. The sky was a dark vault, clouds smothering the stars. The valley lay in shadow, every ridge a blade of black against darker sky. Ethan and Rachel set camp with precision, Tent poles snapped into place. Ropes stretched tight between trunks. Their food was strung 20 feet above the ground, far from the sleeping site. Their spray was unclipped, safety pins pulled. They ate quickly, quietly. A meal of freeze-dried pasta and tea brewed over a small stove. Triss lay near, ears raised, eyes watching the trees. When Ethan poured the last of the water onto the embers, the camp fell silent. He looked around and said softly, "It's too still." Rachel adjusted her jacket. "It's the last night. Tomorrow we're out." Her words were calm, but a thread of unease ran beneath them. Ethan reached for her hand inside the tent. Trish shifted and lay across the opening, as though guarding it. They zipped the door, crawled into their bags, and listened to the forest breathe. At 8:15 that night, the forest did not breathe. It shattered. A weight pressed against the tent wall. Fabric bowed inward. Poles bent with a metallic snap. Triss growled and lunged, barking with desperate fury. Ethan sat upright, heart hammering. Rachel gasped, her hand already on the bear spray canister by her side. The sound was unlike anything human. A deep exhale, rough and wet, followed by the tearing of claws against nylon. The tent collapsed inward. Ethan shouted, his voice raw. "Spray!" Now Rachel fired. The hiss filled the air with orange mist. The chemical clouds stung their eyes, burned their throats. For a second there was silence. Then the growl returned deeper, closer. Again, Ethan yelled. Rachel squeezed the trigger until the canister hissed empty. She heard the bear recoil, felt the ground tremble as it shifted. For one heartbeat, she thought it might run. But the sow did not run. She pressed forward. Hunger drowned out fear. Triss lunged again, her teeth snapping, her body a blur in the chaos. The bear struck. A sound like thunder rolled through the nylon, through the soil, through their bodies. Ethan swung his trekking pole, useless against the mass outside. Rachel clawed for the satellite device. Her fingers shook. She pressed the emergency button once. A red light blinked. The message went. 3 words, nothing more. "Bear attack bad." She whispered the words as if speaking them would make help arrive faster. Ethan shouted again, a sound mixed with command and despair. The bear surged. The tent crumpled, and the world dissolved into motion and fear. Rachel's fingers slipped on the device, her breath coming in fast, shallow bursts. She could hear Ethan yelling her name, though his voice was muffled under the weight of the collapsed tent pressing against their faces. Every sound carried the vibration of the bear's power claws, raking the earth, teeth clacking the snarl of a predator that had chosen its path. "Rachel, stay low," Ethan barked. His voice cracked not from fear alone, but from the force he had to summon to sound firm when every instinct screamed to panic. She pressed her cheek against the damp nylon. It smelled of earth and chemical spray. The bear grunted, shook its massive head, pawing against the tent, as if shredding paper. Triss lunged again, barking with a frenzy that broke into sharp yelps. The noise pierced Rachel's chest. She wanted to call the dog back, but there was no way. Triss was fighting for them, instinct driving her into the path of something too large, too strong. Ethan jammed his shoulder upward, bracing against the bear's weight. His thoughts ran like fire. Hold it back. Buy time. Let the spray work. His chest ached from the effort. He shouted again, not at Rachel this time, but at the animal itself. "Go get out of here." His words rang into the night, swallowed almost instantly by the growl outside. The bear had no language for mercy. It pressed harder, the tent poles snapping under its weight. The fabric tore, opening a jagged slit where cold night air poured in. Through that gap, Rachel saw the flash of an eye. Dark, wet, fixed. It was not the gaze of curiosity. It was decision. She aimed the empty spray canister and squeezed again, praying for one last burst. A sputter escaped, barely enough to sting. Ethan grabbed his own canister and fired the mist, spraying across the opening. For a moment, the bear pulled back, shaking its head, a guttural huff rattling the ground. Ethan thought that might be it. Maybe the deterrent would work. Maybe they had a chance. Then came the sound that broke hope, a deep inhale, a rush of breath so strong it bent the fabric inward. The bear pushed again. Its paw ripped through the opening, claws slashing. Nylon fluttered like shredded sails. Rachel screamed Ethan's name, pressing back her hand, clawing at the earth for something, anything to shield them. The tent collapsed fully, pressing their bodies against the soil. Triss's barks turned to a single sharp cry. Silence followed, thick, unbearable. Rachel couldn't tell if she was breathing or holding her breath. She could only hear the blood pounding in her ears. Ethan reached for her hand and the dark fingers locking over hers with desperate force. "We're together," he whispered. His voice was steady, almost calm, though his eyes burned with the reflection of the animal's shape towering above. The bear lunged once more. The weight crushed down. The earth itself seemed to cave under the impact. Ethan braced, forcing himself over Rachel, his body a shield. Pain seared across his side, though he could not tell if it came from the tent poles or the animal itself. Rachel sobbed into his jacket, her other hand clutching the satellite device like a talisman. The attack was relentless, yet inside the chaos, there were fragments of thought. Ethan saw flashes of their hikes together, Rachel laughing at a summit, Tris bounding through snow, the smell of pine after rain. They had walked this land with reverence. They had taught others to respect it. And now the very thing they respected pressed against them with merciless hunger. Rachel's mind raced with fragments too. Her father's voice telling her never to fear the wild, her mother's hands lacing her boots when she was a girl, Ethan's grin the first time they set foot on the Icefields Parkway together. She thought of how she wanted to say goodbye, but there was no space. Only noise weight and the frantic hope that someone had read their message. The bear shifted, circling the wreckage, the sound of claws raking through packs and gear. A mug rolled somewhere in the dark. A zipper tore. The smell of pepper spray lingered sharp and metallic, mixed with the musk of wet fur. Ethan seized the paws. He shoved upward, bursting through the flap with the last of his strength. Cold air hit his lungs like knives. He saw the outline of the Grizzly, now massive shoulders, heaving fur and glistening, under the pale wash of a clouded moon. She towered nearly 8 feet when she rose on her hind legs. Her chest swelled, breath-steaming eyes fixed on him with unflinching resolve. He shouted again, "Rachel, crawl, go." Rachel's body froze, torn between running and clinging to him. The forest stretched endless around them. No light, no trail, no human sound. She realized the truth in a single cold instant. There was nowhere to go. Rescue was hours away, maybe more. The only thing between them and death was the moment at hand. The Grizzly roared. The sound vibrated through the ground, through their bones, through the marrow of their fear. Ethan raised the spray again, firing what little remained. The mist shone in the moonlight. The bear swung its head, coughing once, but then pressed forward again, undeterred. Rachel screamed. Tris, wounded but alive, limped to her side, snarling, low tail stiff. The bear's shadow fell over all of them, a wall of muscle claw and hunger. And then silence again. A silence heavier than sound. The bear stood motionless, head tilting, as though weighing them. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Rachel clutched his arm, her nails digging into his jacket. The animal's breath plumed white against the night. Seconds stretched like hours. When the attack surged again, it was sudden, brutal, unstoppable. The sow lunged the ground, quaking under her mass. Ethan pulled Rachel close, his last words rough, fierce. "Stay with me." Dawn broke slowly over the Red Deer River Valley. The light was gray, washed across the ridges like ash, cold and unfeeling. A helicopter from Parks Canada thudded through the sky at 5 a.m., its blades chopping the silence as it rose over the tree line. The response team on board had spent the night in tense preparation, grounded by weather, forced to wait while the hours slipped away. Each man carried the hope, however thin, that Ethan and Rachel had somehow survived until morning. When they touched down near the coordinates, hope collapsed. The tent lay flattened poles, shattered like snapped bones. Packs were torn, scattered in the frost. The gear bore the scars of claws and teeth fabric, shredded in long arcs that told the story without words. And near that tent, they found the bodies of Ethan, Cole, Rachel, Meyer, and their loyal dog, Tris. The bear spray cans lay empty, one still in Ethan's hand. The faint tang of capsaicin hung in the air. It clung to the soil, to the broken fabric, to the very breath of the valley. They had fought. They had done everything right. A ranger knelt and closed his eyes. "They knew the rules," he murmured, voice tight. "They knew them better than most." The silence pressed heavy. The men scanned the tree-lined fingers near triggers, ears sharp for the rustle of something massive. Then movement appeared, a shadow in the brush 200 yards away. The Grizzly emerged slowly, shoulders rolling, head lifted. She was enormous, fur bristling, her muzzle stained with earth. She stared at the team without hesitation. She did not run. She did not fear. She stepped forward. Unusual behavior, one ranger muttered, raising his rifle. Another whispered, "She's testing us." The order came crisp, final. "We can't risk another." A shot cracked. The bear dropped in the brush, her mass settling into the soil with a thud that seemed to echo through the valley. The team stood still, weapons lowered, faces grim. It was not triumph, it was necessity. Later examinations found nothing that explained it. No cubs to defend, no wounds to cause desperation, no starvation. She was healthy, powerful, and inexplicably aggressive. A bear that made her own rules. A predator that reminded everyone that wilderness is not a theater, not a stage for human control, but a sovereign realm where instinct reigns. News traveled fast. Within a day, the story stretched across Alberta, across Canada, across the globe. Headlines read of the red deer tragedy. Photos of Ethan and Rachel appeared online, smiling at summits, standing with maps of their arms around each other, with Triss at their feet. Tributes poured in. Friends described them as steady, thoughtful, never reckless. Colleagues remembered their passion for conservation, for science, for teaching others to love the land without abusing it. Strangers who had never met them wept at the thought of two lives cut short in the very wilderness they honored. Their families issued a brief statement. No anger, no blame, just words soft with grief and clarity. They died doing what they loved. At Parks Canada, the incident shook the staff to the core. Manuals were reopened, protocols examined, training reissued. Yet when the reports came to their conclusion, there was no mistake to highlight, no shortcut, no error. Ethan and Rachel had done everything right. The one truth written in the margin of every report was the one no ranger wanted to admit: sometimes nature makes the rules. And when it does, even the most prepared may fall. Experts spoke on television, their voices calm but edged with unease. Grizzlies can smell food from over 20 miles away, one biologist explained. During hyperphagia, they can eat for up to 20 hours a day. Instinct takes over. Boundaries blur. Another added, "This was the first fatal grizzly attack in Banff in over 40 years. That's how rare it is. But rare doesn't mean impossible." Debates followed. Had growing tourism shifted animal behavior? Had climate stress altered the rhythms of feeding? Was this simply one rogue bear or a sign of something larger? No answer settled the unease. The public wanted certainty. Nature offered none. Ethan and Rachel were laid to rest in Lethbridge, the same place where their journeys had begun. The service was small, filled with friends, fellow hikers, scientists who had walked trails with them. Photos lined the hall, the two of them standing beside glaciers, wading rivers, leaning over maps, with trysts between them. The community spoke not of their deaths, but of their devotion. They were remembered not as victims, but as guardians of the land, partners in every sense of the word. Among the hiking community, their story became a kind of cautionary legend. Not a warning to stay away, but a reminder to never forget where you stand. Their final message, 3 words, no punctuation, no farewell, carried a weight greater than pages of safety manuals. Bear attack bad. It was simple, stark, and eternal. A warning, a cry, and a goodbye all at once. In time, people walked the Red Deer Valley again. They pitched tents under the same dark sky. They hung food in trees, carried bear spray at their sides. Some whispered Ethan and Rachel's names before zipping their tents shut at night. Some said it was a way of paying respect. Others said it was a way of reminding themselves that wilderness has no guarantees. The forest, meanwhile, carried on. Spruce swayed in the wind, streams ran cold, ravens wheeled over ridges, and somewhere beyond the reach of satellites and reports, another grizzly turned leaves with its claws, snout pressed to the soil in search of roots. The cycle continued. Nature had not paused, but for those who knew the story, the silence of that valley would never sound the same. Ethan and Rachel's legacy lives not in the violence of their final night, but in the decades before it, in every summit they reached, in every friend they taught to walk gently in the backcountry, in every memory of Triss bounding through snow. They walked with respect, they died with courage, and their story remains carved into the stone of the Red Deer River Valley, a reminder etched in wilderness itself. Because sometimes the wild whispers softly, sometimes it roars, and sometimes in the fragile space between the two, it takes. If this story of us is about 9 out of 10, subscribe so that we can entertain you more. On the other hand, you find this story ridiculous, comment down below. Please let us know what we can improve to bring you a more enjoyable time on our channel. Your support means the world to us.